Hey, it's Mom, and tonight we're going to make white bean chicken chili soup. Okay, so we're going to need 3 stalks of celery, 3 carrots, an onion. Just a yellow onion is fine. I have 2 chicken breasts. You can always adjust and make more or less, so if it's just for you, you can just use 1 chicken breast. If it's for 6 to 10 people, you can add 3 chicken breasts, or if you just like a lot of chicken, you can always add more. We're going to use chili powder, cumin, chicken base. If you don't have chicken base, I highly recommend that you get a tub. It's useful for so many different things in the kitchen. I have 2 cans of white beans. You can always use dried if you soak them ahead of time. These are really quick and easy. And then a can of diced tomatoes with green chilies. If you don't like it spicy at all, just use regular diced canned tomatoes. Make sure that you wash your vegetables thoroughly, peel your carrots, the smaller parts of the carrots. You can just chop like this. As it gets bigger, you'll want to have more manageable sizes, so you either cut them in half or cut them in quarters. That I like to do is cut the end, and then you just barely cut where the root is, and then you peel this first layer off so that there's none of the dry skin. If you run it under hot water, that also helps to loosen up that dry skin. Then you take your onion and you cut it in half, long way, so that you've got the root still at each end. And then if you go across the onion like this, and then this way, this root end holds everything together until you get to the very end. You don't have to worry about the onion falling apart, but the way that you cut it, it uses the natural layers in the onion to form a nice dice, so you don't have to make all those chops. One of the things that I like to do is have everything ready to go. So you'll want to have all your ingredients laid out and ready. Chop everything up, keep everything in a nice clean area. Get rid of all your scraps as you are cutting your vegetables and cleaning them. And that way, then once you start cooking, everything is ready and good to go. I'm going to put all of these things into a bowl, and then we're going to cut up the chicken. You always want to cut your chicken last, or your whatever meat that you're working on. Once you're finished that, you want to sanitize your cutting board, because food safety is of utmost importance. Don't want any foodborne illness or bacteria on your cutting board. You know, sanitize the cutting board with a little bit of bleach water and your knife, and just make sure everything is good and clean. Okay, so now we're just going to cut up the chicken breast. This is just a regular boneless, skinless chicken breast. We're going to remove the fat. We're going to remove any sort of gristle, tendons that might be in here. We just want nice, clean meat. We're just going to take nice, clean cuts about ½ an inch. Make strips one way. Cut it again. It depends on how thick your chicken breast is as well. So if you get a chicken breast that's fairly thick depth-wise here, you may want to take an additional slice through here. I'll show you on the next chicken breast how we can do that. When you get to this one very end of the chicken breast, there's always some pieces that have a little bit more tendon in there. Cut that out because it's kind of chewy. It's not fun to eat. So this one isn't too thick, but if you wanted smaller pieces, so if your chicken breast was really thick, you could cut these slices like this and then cut it in half again this way. And then when you dice it, you've got nice uniform sizes of meat. It kind of depends on the soup and whether you want something that's chunky or if you want something a little bit more of a finer dice. Again, you get to this part of the breast here that's got a little bit more of the joining tissues here. And you're just going to cut that off. Doesn't have to be perfectly square, just so that it's bite-sized pieces. Chicken meat is all diced, ready to go. So one of the things that we like to do when you're cooking is you always need to have a hot pan when you start. When I'm cooking soup, I don't like to use oil if I can avoid it. Eventually it will come to the top and you're going to have an oily surface and an oily soup. So, when you can, a lot of people say yes, you need to add oil to saute your chicken. I don't think so. I think you can add a little bit of water if you need to. But if you just actually put the chicken into a hot pot, the moisture will come out of it as it's cooking and release it from the pan. As we're getting ready for the chicken, pot's heating up. We're going to open up the cans and get everything ready for that. I like to drain the juice from the beans. Okay, pan is nice and hot, so we're just going to put the chicken right into the pan. It's going to sizzle a little bit. Let that cook. I actually got this on medium high. We're just going to let that cook. Comes on the bottom and the juices will release. Okay, so you can see that it's starting to turn brown, and all of these pieces are just coming right up off of the pot. Now, brown is good. It adds lots of good flavor and color to your soup. We'll just spread that out and let that cook again. Let that other side brown. See all the juices that are coming out of the chicken? The spices that we're going to be using today are chili powder and cumin. When you're using red and yellow spices, the thing that you need to remember is that these are oil-soluble spices, so they don't dissolve in water. So you want to add those to your meat when there's some some oil, a little bit of natural fat in the pan. So we're going to add those before we add the water to the pot for the stock. I'm going to add those now, and I think there's probably about 2 tablespoons. One of the things that you'll realize when I cook is that I typically don't use measurements. I cook to taste, and so we're gonna sprinkle some of the chili powder in here. Probably use, well, that's at least a good tablespoon or 2, and then the cumin powder. Probably an equal amount. Let that cook in with the chicken, stir it in, let it dissolve with the fat that's in the pan from the chicken, the natural fat that came out. And once that chicken meat is cooked, and it's pretty close now, it doesn't have to be completely cooked, because you have to remember that once you're going to add your vegetables, and then you're going to add your water and make your stock, that chicken will continue to cook as your soup is cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in the vegetables that we cut up earlier, that we diced earlier. And we're just going to let that cook for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be translucent and soft, because they're going to cook in the stock. So you just want to get them sauteed just for a few minutes. Now, if you don't have chicken base, what I like to use, I like chicken base and I like beef base. I always have it in the house. I like the Knorr just because of the ingredients, and I like the flavor, the taste of it. You can always use chicken stocks or chicken broth. You can buy like a Swanson's type, either cans or in the liter cartons. I prefer this because you can adjust the flavor as much or as little as you want. Okay, so all of our vegetables are starting to cook. The onions are starting to get a little bit translucent. It's time to go. So let's throw our beans in. These are just white beans. Doesn't have to be white beans. If you wanted to make a black bean chicken chili, you could do that. Or if you had 1 can of white beans and a can of garbanzo beans, something like that, you could always mix it up. You know, variety is kind of the spice of life. I'm going to add a can of diced tomatoes with green chilies. The green chilies add a nice spice to it. Again, if you don't like the spice, you can always just add a can of diced chilies. If you have lots of fresh tomatoes, dice up the tomatoes and add those. This is just kind of the easy way to do things. And now that everything's in, we're going to add some water. I think I've got 8 cups in this. And when you look at this, it's a little bit thick, but it's thick with the vegetables. So I'm going to add just a little bit more water to that. We'll just add water so that it's just a nice soup consistency. You want to have a nice ratio of vegetables and broth. So I think we added probably another 5 or 6 cups of water to that. Okay, so when you stir it, you can see there's a nice ratio of vegetables to broth in that pot. And at this point, we're going to add the chicken base. If you've never worked with this before, it's similar to a bouillon cube, except it's in a liquid or paste form. So it's just like that. the container calls for a teaspoon per 8 ounces of water. So we're just going to add a couple of big lumps. I would say add a little bit less than what you think. You can always add more. And this is the thing about cooking to taste, is when you're not using a recipe and you're just kind of going off your memories, you want to taste it frequently. Add little bits at a time, taste it, add a little bit more. The chicken base will add a lot of flavor that, if you ever tasted something and it tasted a little bit bland, when you add that chicken base or beef base, kind of gives it that oomph that it was missing. Okay, so we've had about 10 minutes to let this simmer. Nice little rolling simmer like this. You can see how full it is with vegetables and chicken. At this point, after the chicken base has had a chance to dissolve and kind of meld into the soup, just have a taste. See how it is. On your lips. It's pretty good. At this point, we're going to adjust it. You can make sure that you use a clean spoon when you're adding more chicken base. I have instant boiling water, so I run my spoon under instant boiling water. And I'm just going to add probably another half a teaspoon of base, and I think that's going to do it for this. It's almost dead on. Of course, depending on the type of chili powder that you used, whether you used the tomatoes with green chilies or just regular tomatoes, it's going to depend on, just what you need to do to adjust it. How much water you added. Taste it. That's the important thing. Taste it and just add until it tastes good to your taste buds. This is ready to go. We finished this up. It took us about half an hour to make a nice big pot of soup. Just dish some up. Look how beautiful that is. Tastes good. If you have any questions or requests, email me at momscookingadvice@gmail.com or leave a comment down below.